And so we find ourselves, ye trembling acolytes of the comedic Colosseum, at the precipice of an unspeakable transgression, an act of verbal iconoclasm so sacrilegious in its proposition that even the mere whisper of it sends seismic reverberations throughout the hallowed halls of stand-up orthodoxy.
The person who said something was Faison Love about him being a little overrated. Now, like I said, in movies, television, Dave Chappelle is elite. Elite. But if you go watch Dave Chappelle do stand-up, it was an old man at the Improv just stood up while Dave Chappelle was on stage. And he said, Dave, are you going to crack some jokes? If I'm lying, I'm dying. Yeah. D-Ray that was down there. I know D-Ray, y'all don't want no parts of this. You don't want to burn bridges with the mighty Dave Chappelle. I don't want to burn bridges with the mighty Dave Chappelle. But for that, my nuts too big. I watch Dave Chappelle finna go up. I'll be like, well, let me get the out of here. Because he is not about to deliver. He's about to talk to the crowd like the big homie. You know how the big homie be talking and don't nobody say nothing? Everybody just be like, yup.
Right.
Yup. Then I'll be like, man, this has been bombing for about 2 hours up there.
Man.
Smoking a square with a leotard on.
The throne upon which the revered Dave Chappelle has sat for decades, an immovable, indomitable bastion of satirical supremacy, now trembles beneath the unrelenting seismic scrutiny of one Corey Holcomb, a man whose entire existence is predicated upon the systematic immolation of sacred cows, the verbal desecration of society's untouchable idols. It is a critique so audacious, so unrepentantly heretical, that its very articulation is enough to summon forth the digital inquisition, the rabid legions of the Chappellean faithful who stand ready to excommunicate any heretic who dares question the divine infallibility of their comedic messiah. But in this grand amphitheater of discourse, where no truth shall be left unexamined, where no reputation is impervious to scrutiny, we must ask the question in its full, unrelenting brutality. Is Dave Chappelle truly funny? But herein lies the great cognitive schism, the unbridgeable chasm between perception and reality, between nostalgia-laden reverence and the cold, unsentimental calculus of contemporary comedic assessment. Corey Holcomb, the harbinger of this rhetorical revolution, dares to crack the marble veneer of the Chappellean monument, peeling back the layers of mythos to expose a reality far less glamorous than the fables would suggest. For too long, the comedic ecosystem has operated upon the presumption that Chappelle, by mere virtue of his reputation, is immune to criticism, that his presence alone is a sufficient substitute for punchlines, that his cadence alone is a suitable replacement for humor. But the question that looms over this entire spectacle, the specter that haunts every stage he now steps upon, is whether the emperor of satire still wears the regalia of wit or whether, beneath the shimmering illusion, stands a man who now coasts upon the fumes of his own mythology. To analyze this grand shift in Chappelle's comedic trajectory, one must acknowledge the metamorphosis that has transpired over the decades. In his nascent era, in the embryonic stages of his ascendancy, Chappelle was the harbinger of comedic insurrection, a linguistic pugilist whose every syllable was drenched in a nectar of razor-sharp observation, whose every performance was a masterclass in the art of social deconstruction. He was an alchemist of laughter, transforming the basest elements of racial and cultural tension into comedic gold, a griot of the absurd whose wit knew no bounds. But lo, how the tides have turned, how the river of innovation has slowed to a murky stagnation, how the electric, kinetic unpredictability of his early performances has now congealed into a languorous, self-indulgent soliloquy masquerading as stand-up. Corey Holcomb, in his verbalized coup d'etat, does not critique the man. He critiques the transformation, the palpable shift from the comedian to the orator, from the joker to the philosopher, from the sharp-edged assassin of political satire to the wistful raconteur who now paces the stage like a village elder, bestowing upon the audience not jokes, but wisdom-infused monologues. What was once rapid-fire wit has now become an extended exercise in intellectualized pontification. What was once a tightly wound explosion of satire has now unraveled into an extended fireside chat, a marathon of reflections that, while thought-provoking, often meander into the nebulous realm of stand-up purgatory, a space where humor is sacrificed upon the altar of self-importance. This, then, is the great chasm between Chappelle's past and present, the existential crisis that now engulfs his comedic legacy. To invoke the ire of the Chappellean disciples is to tread upon perilous ground, for his fan base is no mere collection of admirers. It is an ecclesiastical congregation, a sect whose devotion transcends the realm of mere appreciation and ascends into the sanctified dominion of idolatry. For them, the act of questioning Chappelle is not an act of critique, it is an act of blasphemy. To suggest that his humor may have dulled, that his comedic blade no longer slices with the same precision, is tantamount to heresy. And yet, within this fervent devotion lies the very crux of the issue. Chappelle is no longer judged by the merits of his present output, but by the echoes of his past greatness. Holcomb, ever the provocateur, refuses to genuflect before this altar of nostalgia. He does not approach Chappelle as an untouchable deity, but as a contemporary performer, subject to the same scrutiny as any other comedian who steps upon the stage. And in this radical act of demythologization, he forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality. Are we laughing because Chappelle is funny, or are we laughing because we believe we are supposed to? Does the room erupt in laughter because the joke is sharp, or because the audience has been conditioned to believe that every utterance from the comedic oracle must be met with reverence? Has his name become the punchline itself, a self-perpetuating cycle wherein the mere presence of Chappelle overrides the need for substantive comedic delivery? In this grand autopsy of comedic orthodoxy, Corey Holcomb emerges not as a mere detractor, but as an essential disruptor, a necessary agent of deconstruction in an industry that too often mistakes legacy for immunity. His words are not merely an attack. They are an intervention, a challenge to the uncritical adulation that has, in many ways, insulated Chappelle from the very standards he once imposed upon the comedic world. For what is comedy, if not the art of provocation? And what is provocation, if not the willingness to question even the most untouchable of figures? In refusing to indulge in the cultish reverence that surrounds Chappelle, Holcomb has done what few dare. He has stripped away the aura of invincibility, forcing us all to confront the undeniable question. If Dave Chappelle were not Dave Chappelle, would we still call him the greatest? And so, the stage is set, the gauntlet has been thrown, and the comedic world stands at a crossroads. Chappelle, the once indisputable messiah of satire, now faces a choice. Does he remain upon this path of philosophical indulgence? Or does he return to the crucible of sharp, unforgiving comedy that once defined his greatness? For if he chooses the former, if he resigns himself to the trajectory of the wise elder rather than the relentless provocateur, then his legacy shall forever be sealed in the amber of nostalgia, admired, respected, but no longer feared. And for a comedian, there is no greater tragedy than to become predictable. Corey Holcomb has sounded the alarm. The question now is whether Chappelle will heed it, or whether he shall remain content to coast upon the echoes of his past, a titan of an era now slipping into the tranquil obsolescence of its own mythology. The truth is out. The laughs will decide.